In this lesson we will be creating a journey pendant, which could also be modified to create some journey earrings. This design will also serve the purpose of allowing us to focus in on our history manager a bit, and we will also be applying variables to our design so that we are able to make easy and broad modifications to it. So we'll start off by creating a new file, generic template, name the part, okay, now the basic design of this piece is fairly simple, and the concepts and commands needed to create it we have covered in previous lessons, so I'll be moving through it rather quickly. However, we'll be seeing some new things, some new concepts as we go along, so this will be a useful design to create. We'll start off by creating the curve with which we're going to be sweeping along to create the base of our shape, of our journey pendant. Okay, so I'll start off by going into a sketch. I'll create a new sketch. My top datum, use centroid defined by plane. Okay, now notice in the lower left hand corner we have a value here, 45mm. This is the approximate, or I should say exact, distance from top to bottom of our view. Okay, so we can use it for an approximate guide when creating our sketch. Let's say I want a 30mm piece in length. Okay, I just scrolled in to change this, zoomed in to change that value. So say 30mm. We could create our basic curve by using a 3-point curve within our sketch environment. Just picking points like so. Okay, we can play around now with our tangencies, tangency handle, drag the points to get the exact shape that we want, that we'll be sweeping along. Okay, so I'll confirm this. We will be placing a datum at the end point here, a rectangle on that datum, and we were sweeping it along this curve. Again, we could make modifications to the shape of this sweep by just coming into our sketch again and dragging these points around, like so. Okay, but we can also add variables and dimension constraints to these points to allow for a different kind of modification to our design. Okay, our variables we can add into our attributes panel, the driving parameters. Again, we could play with them from here. So we will do this. Come back into our sketch. Now we can add dimension constraints to points on a 3-point curve. If we use our quick dimension tool, we pick our point on the curve, our control point, let's say this one, left click. We can constrain it dimensionally, let's say to the origin. Left click. Then we can pick the type of dimension constraint we want. I want this horizontal constraint. Left click to paste the text. And then we can move our point in this way. Okay, and we can set these up for all of our points on the curve. Okay, maybe I'll do a vertical dimension constraint for these ones, our endpoints, start point and end point. Okay, so we're having control like this over our point curve in this way, and then we can create our variables and assign them to these dimensions. Okay, so let's say we'll create a variable upper point offset, middle point offset, lower point offset. Let's call this the top length and the bottom length. Okay, so it'll be useful to make note of these current values approximately before we create our variables, because we'll need to create our variables with a value. So let's say the upper point offset is about 2, the middle about 2 also, the lower 3, top length let's say 12, bottom length 18. Okay, so remember we can't insert variables from within our sketch level. We have to exit back out into our part level, insert variable, type the variable name. So let's start with upper point offset. Okay, the value we had was about 2. I'm just going to copy this text so I can paste it into the next one to avoid typing it every time. Let's confirm. We'll see it added into our expressions in the history manager. Middle click to bring up the insert variable. Again, let's right click, paste, change this to the middle point offset, which we had at about 2 as well. Okay, middle click, paste, lower point offset, which we had about 3, middle click, top length, 12, and bottom length, about 18. Okay, so we have our variables there. We can now link them up to our dimensions within our constraint. We double click to enter into our sketch again. We have our dimensions here, double click on the dimension or right click, modify. Then we left click on the assign variable. This will open up our variables browser. If we don't see our variables in this section, we left click on this icon here to go back into our root object. We pick our root object. It's the only one here, but it is our lesson 10 journey pendant. Okay, we can see which one we're in up here, lesson 10 journey pendant. Left click. There are our variables. Okay, we want to assign this variable to the upper point offset. So left click, you'll see it pop in there. Okay, we want to have only one instance of that. Then we OK, and you should see it update to that value. Okay, so let's assign the rest of these. Okay, now we have our variable browser up. We don't need to left click on our assign variable each time. We can just pick it straight off from our variable browser. This is the bottom length and the top length. Okay, so these are all linked up now. We can exit back into our part level, come into our attributes drop down menu, part, driving parameters. Now we're going to insert these variables into our driving parameters panel. So we left click on an asterisk field, then we right click, browse variables to bring up our variable browser, left click on our variable, and then we're popping it in there. So we do the same for each one. Left click, left click. Let's apply to lock these values in. Now we can make modifications from here. So we want to increase the middle offset. Okay, you can see the effect it has, 3 maybe. We want to change the top length, 14. Bring the bottom down, 16. Okay, so this curve here, we now have control over. So this is one way to add controls to our curve. Okay, this is the driving curve that we'll be sweeping along to create the shape for our pendant. Okay, I'm going to show you another method. We come back into our sketch. Okay, and this method is kind of similar, but instead of dimensioning our point curve, we'll be adding our dimensions to a skeleton prior to adding in our point curve. Okay, so I'm going to delete all of this. Window pick, delete. Okay, and I'm going to create a skeleton. Okay, so I'm placing some lines, 2-point lines. I'm going to let this one constrain vertically. Another one. Down to the bottom. Let's let this next line snap to the midpoint of our first line. Okay, so you can see the midpoint constraint icon there. Left click, keep it horizontal. Okay, we'll bring them out like this. Again, we'll snap this one to the midpoint. Okay, now I'm also going to create two lines from our endpoints like this. Okay, you can see it's wanting to throw in these smart picking, these auto constraints like that. I don't really want those auto constraints, so I'm just going to place this line where I won't get an auto constraint like that. Okay, now we can add dimension constraints to our skeleton. Right click, quick dimension. First of all, we'll do this one. This was the top length. Here we left click. Okay, it's already throwing in a variable there. It's the wrong one. So let's backspace, we'll delete it. Select variable. Come to our journey pendant. This is the top length. Okay, so we're assigning this as the top length. Next up, we'll do this one. It's the wrong one again. This is the upper point offset. Middle point offset. Lower point offset. Okay, sometimes you may see that this is going to throw in, look, sometimes it throws in multiple instances of this variable. Okay, and it won't work. Just highlight it all, delete it, make sure it's only one instance of the variable thrown in. Okay, just one. Again, this finally, we have the bottom length. Okay, you see again, it threw in two. Just want the one. Sometimes, if you do too long of a mouse click, you're holding down the left click too long, it will throw in more than one instance. Okay, so now we have our variables set up on our skeleton. Okay, I also want to add in some new dimension constraints, some angular dimension constraints between this line and this line. So we have control over the angle there. Now I need to create variables for this. So let's exit, insert, variable. Let's call this start angle. Say 30 degrees. End angle. Let's say 50 degrees. Come back into our sketch again. We'll assign the variables to the dimension. Start angle. End angle. Okay, and the purpose of these angles you will see right now as I exit into my part level. Here is the skeleton for our curve, and now I come into my wireframe. So I'm creating my point curve, my 3-point curve within the part level. Left click. Now prior to placing my first point at the end here, I'm going to come into the constraints section. In tangent direction, left click in this field. I'm going to assign a tangent direction along this curve, the one that has the angle to it. Left click the point. We're going to let it snap to the end point. If we want to be sure, we can set our input option to critical. Okay, so it's going to snap to the endpoints and midpoints, critical points. So it's only going to snap there. That's our first point. And you can see it now has a direction along this line. Next point on this one. Third point at the end here. And so on. Before we come to the last endpoint, we're going to add the tangent direction along this way. Not this side of the line, but this side. Let's snap to the endpoint there. Middle click, confirm. Okay, so now these points are linked up to the skeleton points. Come to our attributes panel, part, driving parameters. Let's add those angular constraints. Left click, right click, browse variables, start angle, end angle, Oops, I did the wrong thing there. Let's try that again. Attributes, part, driving parameters, start angle, end angle, apply to lock them in. Okay, now we can see how our skeleton controls our 3-point curve. Okay, so we have these controls. Okay, and let's have a look at how our angle will control the shape of our start and end. Let's say we want to increase the angle. Okay, but I'm happy with this shape for now. We can always come in and play with it once we've got our sweep along here. So for now I'm going to blank out our sketch, so we have just the curve. Right click, blank. Let's save our work. Save. Okay, now we will create a datum at the endpoint with which we can put a rectangle on to sweep along. So we're going to right click, insert datum. Okay, we're going to use our intelligent datum. We're going to let it snap to the endpoint. Okay, so the datum with our intelligent method on is going to automatically come in normal to this line. Left click. Okay, we'll take away the rectangle. Okay, and that alignment looks fine to me. Confirm the operation. Okay, now I'll come in with a rectangle. I'll use the width height defining method, pick the plane, the one we just created. I'm going to use the center method. We'll pick the first point, the center, the height 1.5, the width, let's say 3.5. Confirm the operation. Okay, so now we're going to sweep this rectangle along the curve. Okay, we'll be doing an offset sweep so that it is narrower at the end. Come into our shape tab, sweep. Okay, we can't pick this as a complete rectangle yet. We have to right click, insert curve list. We'll do a chain pick by holding down the shift key. Left click, confirm. Okay, there's our curve list. Our path is this curve. Okay, you can see our sweep there. Okay, so that's all nice, but now we want to add in a scale. We want a variable scale, so we can have different scaling factors along our sweep. We'll add some points, control points, pick the point, okay, let it snap to our endpoint. The scale factor, let's say we want it to be a half, 0.5. Okay, so that will be half of 3.5 at the end here. Okay, we only want the scale to be along the width. We do not want to scale along the depth of this. So we change it to, by looking at our datum here, it's going to be an X only scale, because this is the X direction here. The width is in the X direction. If we confirm the operation, we'd be scaling the width, which was 3.5, scaling it by a factor of a half, so that should scale it down to 1.75 millimeters. Confirm the operation, and there we have a scale. Okay, but it's scaled the entire thing. That's because we need to add in another point at this endpoint, and it snap to our curve. Okay, the scale factor will be 1. This means we do not have a scale at all. Okay, scale type X only, confirm, and there we have our scale. Okay, so we could add multiple points along here to have different scaling factors, but I want just the 2. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of this point, this scaling point part, back into the sweeping options panel. Okay, the rest of these options seem fine to me. Confirm the operation, and there we have our sweep. Okay, now I'm going to erase these curves that we created, the rectangle. Window pick, erase. I will also erase the datum. We do not need that anymore. Datum plane, left click, erase. You will save the work. Okay, now let's see how we can modify our shape with our parameters again, our variables. Going to work in the same way. We could increase our upper offsets. Okay, increase the length. We'll decrease it. Okay, change the angle. Okay, so now is the time to just play around until we see something that we like. Okay, this is beginning to look quite nice now. Okay, but with this we can really make many different types of designs. Okay, I'm just going to confirm this now. Okay, so we have our shape with our control set up. Next up we will create the channel to pave our stones within. Okay, we've seen how to do this before in previous lessons, so I'll be going over it pretty quickly. Okay, but let's begin. So I'm going to start off by performing an offset of this top face. We'll change the face color to brown. 0 offset, which is duplicating the face. Okay, now let's blank out the lower shape. And then shape, shell, we're going to shell this. Let's give it a thickness of negative 0.25. This will be the depth of the channel. Like so. Now we perform a face offset. We offset the top face just a small distance, or any distance. It won't have an effect on the final channel, but this is so we don't have constant faces. We offset the inside or the side faces. Okay, but we want to offset these at a negative distance, so negative 2.5. Okay, now we will add a chamfer to these edges to form the bright cut in our channel. Chamfer. Okay, we could change our value first. Let's say 0.25 setback, and we can pick our edges to chamfer. Okay, but I think I want to perform an asymmetric chamfer so that I have a higher offset, a greater offset along this side compared to in here. Okay, so that's asymmetric. Change our offset, we'll set it to, let's say 0.25 is fine to begin with. A setback, our angle, let's increase it just so we can see what's going on when we pick our edges. So remember, when we have an asymmetric chamfer, we have to pick the edge and then a face afterwards. Okay, we can see our help down here. It says select edges to chamfer. So let's pick this edge, and then we have to select face on first side. Okay, so you can see the effect of picking a different face will have on our chamfer. Okay, so we want our chamfer this way around. Okay, so we can continue picking edges, faces, edges, faces. Last one at the end. Edge, face. Okay, so let's confirm the operation. I'm going to right click, blank, unblank this shape, and now I'll redefine last, redefining the chamfer. I'll bring my setback, let's bring it down to 0.2, and the angle, I'm going to drop it down until it comes closer to the top of our shape here. Okay, you don't have to do this, but I like to, so that we have the same offset that we specified. Okay, we want about 0.25 width here. So we'll bring this down about 52, confirm the operation, and now we do our combine remove. Remove our base, the one we want to keep, operator, our removing shape. Do not keep the remove shapes. Confirm. There we have a channel for our stones. Okay, let's see how much space we have in here. Inquire, distance, set our entity filter onto edge. Okay, we have about 0.9 millimeters in here. Okay, so that's enough space to get some stones in, so that's fine. Save our work. Now we'll do our gemstone array as we've seen before, so let's speed through it. We'll use our gems between two curves. First curve, curve A, edge, this edge, second curve, this edge, okay, surface, this surface. Going to increase our number, let's cancel out the materials box. Increase our number, say 30. Okay, we'll give an elevation 0.2. Bring them up from the surface a bit. Okay, we'll spread our stones along, even them out. That has no real effect, but we'll do it anyway. Okay, now we can see, okay, we have alright spacing here. If you feel like they're getting a bit close, we can always increase the minimum distance. I sometimes like to increase it to 0.1 just to ensure that our stones have enough space between them and we won't get any collisions with them. Okay, so our stones are getting pretty small here. This one's probably like we saw before, about 0.9 millimeters. That's fine. Confirm the operation. There are our gemstones. Hide our JCD datum layer. It's the component datums. Save our work. Okay, now let's do the usual. We'll add in our prongs. Gem settings. Scaled prongs because our gemstones are scaled. Our stones we'll pick as a feature. Let's pick them all at once. Okay, let's drop our overlap down 25. Okay, we have some prongs in here. Okay, so long as they're not smaller than about 0.3, 0.25, then the prong size is fine. Smaller than that, and our 3D printers, casting, etc. will have difficulty producing them. And also they won't have such strength when it comes to setting our stones. So make sure your prongs aren't too small. Okay, I'm okay with these. Let's bring our height down a bit. Leave it up there if we were to manufacture this. Bring it down. We don't need that extra material for rendering. Confirm. Not going to tweak, so I'll exit out of the tweak tool. There are our prongs. Okay, let's use our cutters. Use the pilot cutter. Again, pick the stones as a feature. Hover the cursor over the stones, let it load if it needs to. When you see the preview, left click to place the cutters there. Okay, let's check this out from wireframe. Okay, so you can see these cutters are not coming low enough within our bigger stones. Okay, with our smaller stones, they're cutting away enough material. So we'll drop our elevation down. Okay, it probably still won't be enough. Okay, for our smaller stones, sorry, it's more than enough. Okay, so let's confirm the operation. And now we can tweak our cutters. We can increase the pavilion. Okay, but maybe we just want to change the pavilion for our bigger stones. Okay, if we change the pavilion here, let's say we bring it down to 0.8. You can see that we're changing the pavilion for all of our cutters, even the cutters that have plenty of room anyway. Okay, so let's confirm this operation here. Then we'll come into our, again, Tools and Cutters tab, Tweak tool, and we'll tweak our individual cutters. So remember, have it as a component to pick them individually. Left click. Let's go into wireframe mode. Activate the component by left clicking here, and we'll drop our pavilion down for this one, -9. Okay, it needs more, -1. Okay, the reason we're cutting out, making sure that we have enough material cut out here, is so that our renderer performs nicely. Okay, if we were to take this to the bench with the extra material, we could always take it out easily with a drill or a burr. So the reason we ensure there's enough room here for our stones is for rendering purposes. Okay, so confirm the operation. Okay, we need to tweak 2 more. Tweak these 2. Okay, they're picking as a feature. Okay, we can pick them together. They're about the same size, so I don't mind modifying them together. Remember, activate them with that. Drop the pavilion down. We should get away with 0.9. Okay, so we've got plenty of room there now. Shaded mode, merge cutters. Pick the cutters. Okay, I should have picked them as a feature. Remember, we can window pick. You could just window pick, in fact, everything. Our filter will filter out for only the cutters. Okay, so we can pick in that manner. Let's hide our mealy stones layer to check out our cuts. They seem fine. Okay, so the next stage would be to add in our end prongs and then merge the prongs. Remember, we still have control over the shape in our attributes panel, so if I'm not liking the look of something, we can make our changes here. Okay, and see how it all updates. Okay, it will take longer now that we have some gems and prongs and cutters. It will take longer to regenerate each time, so it is best to make our modifications earlier on in the history. Okay, so there you go. Like I said, it's probably best to make your changes to the shape prior to the gemstones. So to do that, you just drag the model stop up prior to the gemstones. Okay, you can suppress these using the suppress. And you come in attributes part, and the changes will generate more quickly, like so. Okay, and then you can right click, unsuppress all. Okay, so this is our journey pendant basically completed. We'll just add in our end prongs. We'll use the component replicate to replicate this component, this prong. For end prongs, confirm, do the same for the other end. Middle click to bring up the component replicate again. Okay, you might want to add in a bigger prong here actually, just to fill the space. But I'm going to leave it at that for now. Then we merge our prongs. Okay, we can pick them all. Pick them with a feature, base. Okay, that appears to have worked nicely. Check it by putting your entity filter onto shape, seeing that it comes in all as one complete shape. Save our work. So we'll add in some fillets now. Okay, let's set the radius to something more appropriate. Pick our edges. Okay, we're getting our preview in here. Yeah, we could be doing a chain pick here to speed up this picking. Okay, let's increase our value a bit, see what we can get away with here. Okay, so let's say 0.24 millimeters radius of our fillet. It will add a fillet to this end as well. Confirm the operation. Okay, we'll just soften the edges up there. Save our work.